Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Chloe and on this channel we talk about all things books. I mentioned in my anti-TBR video that I really wanted to make an effort to go back to doing old style booktube videos, you know, like the dedicated reviews and tags and recommendations. I feel like in the last few years there's been a real focus on vlogs and book hauls and those sorts of videos, and as much as I love them, I love watching them, I think they're great, I also kind of miss just the dedicated reviews for books that we used to get and those more fun tag style videos. So I am on a mission to bring them back. And so I've decided that on this channel I'm going to do a dedicated review video for every book that I read. So I've got quite a backlog to get through, but that's okay. It just means that we have lots of videos to make. That's a me problem, it's fine. Now, the only exception of this is going to be graphic novels. I feel like graphic novels are just too short to make a dedicated video about, so I'll just do a series review when I finish them if I ever pick up graphic novels. But for now, we're going to start with just the books that I've read. So I decided to kick things off with the books that I started the year with. So the very first book that I read this year was Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. This is the fourth book in the Red Rising Saga. Now, very quickly before we start, it goes without saying that because this is book 4 in a series, the video will contain spoilers for the series as a whole. So if you haven't read the initial trilogy, first of all, why did you even click on this video? If you haven't read the original trilogy, why are you watching a review for book 4, you madman? Go back, read the books, and then you can come back and watch this video when you've regained your sanity. But anyway, any spoilers for the book in particular will be very clearly signposted before I say anything, so don't worry about that. But I will reference the previous books throughout, so you have been warned. Okay, so what is this book about then? So Iron Gold takes us back into the world of Red Rising, but with a 10-year time jump. Darrow's revolution has completely reshaped the entire solar system, but things are very far from being stable. This time around we get 4 POVs. So we have Darrow, Lysander, who was the grandson of Octavia, who was the empress of the universe prior to the Rising. We then have Lydia, who is a red from Mars, and we have Ephraim, who is a grey ex-legionnaire. Each one offers just a completely different perspective on the chaos that's unfolding. But this one is essentially a transition book. It's bridging the original trilogy and then this new era. So let's just say things don't go easy for the characters. Okay, so our characters, and like I said, we have 4 main POVs. Our first one, of course, being Darrow. So the original trilogy is told all from Darrow's point of view, and nothing really has changed in this next era. We still get to see him, but with just some more voices added to the mix. He is, in my opinion, the ultimate tortured hero and still very much the epicenter of this entire story. Pierce Brown really puts him through it in this book, but I feel like he's a character who has to hit rock bottom before we see his true brilliance. He doesn't really become his most brutal self until you back him into a corner with no seeming escape. That being said, for a lot of the book I did find myself questioning his decisions. Now, I love morally grey characters and I think that Pierce Brown does them so incredibly well, but this was probably the first time that I found myself frustrated with what Darrow was doing at times. I have absolutely no doubt that all will become clear later in the series, but there was a few decisions that I was questioning what on earth he was thinking. Then we have Lysander. Ugh. That's it. That's the review. Just ugh. But seriously, I get why he's important, but his chapters in his POV really tested my patience. I just think he is so self-righteous. And again, I understand why, but right now, not a fan. I think he is entitled, and the arrogance just leaps off the page at you. And oh my god, I would love to just whack him on the head with the nearest blunt object just to make him shut up for 5 minutes. His chapters were definitely a slog for me getting through this book, but again, I understand the setup. I understand why his character is the way that it is. I just can't wait till someone kills him. Anyway, we then also have Lyria, who is a red from the mines of Mars, just like Darrow. Her entire family has been torn apart by the Rising, and it shows a completely different side to Darrow's rebellion. He was supposed to be their saviour. He was supposed to bring them salvation and make life better. But in actual fact, for many of the low colours, life after the rebellion is so much worse than it ever was before. And she really grew on me. At the start, I wasn't particularly interested in her POV. Her chapters just didn't grip me. But actually, as the book went on, I definitely started to appreciate her more and more. And I felt like she grounded the book in a way that the other characters just can't. Our next non-gold then is Ephraim. So Ephraim, again, was a very interesting wild card. He is a grey. He was an ex-legionnaire. He fought for the Sons of Ares for years. He was very devout to the cause. But again, he lost everything to the Rising. At first, I wasn't really sure how he fit into the bigger picture, and then it becomes clear how he's sort of related to Darrow in his storyline. So Ephraim was the technically fiance, but he says husband of Trig, and Trig is Holiday's brother. So Holiday obviously being like one of Darrow's right-hand women. It's her brother. Trig obviously dies in, is it Morning Star he dies? I think it might be, I can't remember if it's Golden Sun or Morning Star, but anyway, Trig dies, and from this, Ephraim's entire world is just shattered. He leaves the armies, he becomes a mercenary, he falls into drug abuse, alcoholism, deep depression, and his entire world just spirals. But again, it's another very poignant narrative on how war, regardless of the side that you're fighting for, just completely destroys you. I also just want to give a special shout out to Severo and Victra, because although they don't have dedicated POVs, which by the way I think is an absolute crime, I would love to read some chapters from Severo's point of view. Could you even imagine being inside that man's head? It would just be absolutely freaking wild. But I need an entire spin-off with just these two, because every scene with them is just gold, and I feel like we need to make that happen. Please, Piers Brown, please give us a spin-off. As always, Piers Brown's writing is absolutely stunning. His ability to weave together all of these multiple POVs and the high stakes action and all of the political intrigue is just unmatched. All of the interconnecting plots were expertly crafted, and the prose, I think, has a very beautiful, melancholic, almost poetic style to it. That being said, the pacing in this particular book is very different to the pacing of the original trilogy. So since we're being reintroduced to a lot of old characters, you know, they've grown up, they're 10 years older, and they've had 10 years worth of experiences that have shaped who they are. So we have to get reintroduced to them. We have to then be introduced to all of these new characters that we're seeing and learn how the world has changed. It definitely affects the book's pacing and it takes its time to do that. So if you're expecting non-stop action like Morning Star, then you might find this one a little bit slower. I personally did. And this is where the plot flow and the continuity issues come in. It's not really an issue, but it was where my biggest problem with the book was. Iron Gold felt very much like a bridge book, a very necessary one, but still a setup nonetheless. It's very much laying the groundwork for something much, much bigger to come, and it means that parts of it dragged a little bit for me, but that by no means makes it unenjoyable. I was still completely invested in the world and the characters. It just lacked that tight, propulsive storytelling that we got in the original trilogy, in my opinion. I think the slower pacing definitely pays off in the long run, but as a standalone reading experience, it wasn't quite as gripping. Overall, though, Iron Gold was an absolutely fantastic read. Not quite as strong as I was expecting it to be, but it still had all of the things that I love. So, brilliant writing, morally grey characters, intense politics, but then it also had that slower, more sprawling feel that made it a bit harder to stay engaged at times. However, I still gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was absolutely incredible. I would 100% recommend it. If you have read the original trilogy and you're not too sure if you want to carry on with it, please do. Absolutely 100% pick it up. It's a slightly different vibe from the original trilogy, but if you loved that intricate storytelling and that character-driven conflict, you'll love it. 100% hands down. There is definitely more politics to it. There's definitely more layers to this story than the original trilogy. And I think it does a really good job of setting those foundations for what's to come. Alright guys, that is it. That is my review of Iron Gold by Piers Brown. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read this book and what you thought of it. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more bookish content from me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.